We just spoke with someone very, very influential, Colin McMahon, who is the current editor-in-chief of the Chicago Tribune, one of the most recognized newspaper content companies in the world. To hear about his experiences at the company, it was amazing. I mean, he's been with the Tribune since 1987. That's a career spanning over 33 years. He's been in so many different positions, and now he's at the top. So to hear his perspective, it was amazing. What do you think, Michael?
I truly enjoyed the part where he was speaking about how to collaborate with people on your team, but also outside of your team, and really who he likes to surround himself with. You know, people who he can bounce ideas off of, but not every person he's with is, you know, transactional. It's something that someone you can talk to, someone you can run ideas through. So I found that very interesting.
So before we jump into the interview, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Let us know how we're doing in the comments. Let us know if you have an influential person in mind you'd like to hear from, or some of the questions that you also need answered. All right, you ready? Let's jump in. So again, Colin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us in their 20s. We're really excited to hear about your journey and everything that you've been able to accomplish in your career. We really feel like the best place to begin with this interview would to be speaking about your experiences at the Chicago Tribune. We saw that you began at the Chicago Tribune back in 1987. So that's a 33 plus year long career with the Tribune, starting as a local news reporter, and now you are the editor-in-chief of the Chicago Tribune. So there's just so much longevity in there. We would love to hear what you've learned through your experience at the Chicago Tribune.
Yeah, so that sounds like that sounds super old school, right? It sounds like you start with a company, you work there your whole life, and then you retire and they give you a gold watch and you go play golf, right? And I would say it's nothing like that. So I really look at my time at Chicago Tribune in these different chapters, and all of them have been quite different. And that's what's great. Even I think it's important to think about, even if you are doing the same job or working at the same company, you know, at a good company with a lot of different things, your job can be completely different from one year to the next, or over, 10 years, you may end up doing 5 or 6 different things. And I think that's certainly the way that my career's gone. I started out as a copy editor. I went back to reporting. I'd been a reporter before. I was a foreign correspondent for still most of my time at the Tribune. I was a foreign correspondent or foreign editor. And then in this last incarnation, kind of coming into working on the mix of editorial and the business side, really getting involved into digital audience, and really getting involved in trying to understand what we can do in the news media industry to keep preserving and keep performing local journalism. That's been a whole new career too. So I think that that is one takeaway that I give to everybody, which is just because you've been at a place doesn't mean that you're stuck at a place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that when you're at a company, it doesn't mean you're in the same role the whole time. As you just showed, you've done a lot of different things that almost makes it seem like you're at a different job completely, even though you are at the same company, kind of with the same people, but doing a completely different thing. So that kind of leads us into, what kind of mentors did you have both at the Tribune and maybe outside of the Tribune that may have guided, some of these steps? You get that opportunity. Is it, do I stay with the Tribune, or do I take this other opportunity?
Sure.
Who, both at the Tribune and outside, have kind of guided you?
Yeah. So, for me, I'm not sure with you guys, but everybody has some teachers at some point that made a difference. I had a college professor that made a big impact on me, and super old school college professor who just emphasized, for journalists, accuracy, and don't worry about anything else. Just get the story right. Don't let anybody stop you. And I think that kind of foundation of accuracy, integrity, and relentlessness, I've drawn on that my whole career, right? And so lucky enough to have a mentor who was more about, how you conduct yourself, right? And not what you're going to be doing. And because that's how you conduct yourself, that's never going to go away, right? no matter what position is available to you, how you conduct yourself, how you go about your business is a constant, because it really talks about who you are and what your identity is. So that mentor was really important to me. And then, when I got into the newsroom at a couple of other places before Chicago Tribune, it was important to me that I had mentors who understood that I was 21 years old, right? And understood that I was going to make mistakes, and, that I was going to come back from those mistakes and work hard and work harder. And I think that that to me was really important. Even now, I have a high tolerance for people who are really working hard, really trying things, and maybe they're making mistakes along the way. Maybe they're failing, but they're putting in the effort and they're coming back from those failures. And so I feel like when I look back at my 20s, I remember a lot of the misses, and I remember a lot of the screw ups more than I remember the triumphs and the deliveries. So I'm just glad that I had people who could see in me that I was trying and that I was working hard, and I could come back from mistakes, and stuck with me and repeated that it's not the mistake, it's what you do after it.
And was there a best piece of advice that one of these mentors had given to you that you kind of carried with you?
Yeah, I would say ask. The best piece of advice is ask. If you're not going to get anything if you don't ask for something, right? And, people can take that any way they want. They can take it like, well, I'm going to ask for a raise. That's fine. I looked at it more like ask for the assignment, right? Ask for the opportunity. Even if you may not be ready for it, you can ask for things. You signal to people that you have this aspiration. You signal to people that you have this ambition, this initiative, right? And so I'll give you an example. I was a copy editor, then I was what we call an assignment editor, and I was working in the national foreign team, and we had an opening for a national correspondent. So I'm 26 years old. I'd been a reporter, but not at Chicago Tribune. A national correspondent job is a big job. This was in Detroit. And I applied for it, right? And I applied for it not expecting to get it, but I applied for it because I was like, hey, look, this is where I want to be one day. Here's what I have to offer. And I had some people who were like, look at the nerve of this kid, right? But I had other people who were like, yeah, if you don't ask for things, you're not going to get things. If you don't advocate for yourself, you're not going to get things. And so that to me was a good example of how that mindset worked. And of course I didn't get it, but.
That's good that you at least, put it out there that you really wanted it. It's really nice to see that you had that strong confidence in your 20s. When it comes down to it, a lot of times, you're going to be your biggest cheerleader. If you have the skills to, take care of a job, do this responsibility and do it well, you got to really put it out there and make sure people know that.
Yeah. And I think there's a key difference between confidence and a sense of entitlement. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we see in the office is, I talk to people, I'm like, hey, don't mistake this kid's asking to do this with this idea that he thinks he's entitled to do it, right? There is a difference, and you can tell when somebody is put out because they're not, they don't have a column in the Chicago Tribune by the age of 25, right? Between that and saying, hey, look, here's what I want to do, right? Here's how I see myself. I mean, those are two different things. And so it may look the same to some people because they're not paying attention, but there is a difference, and one is good and one is not.
So now, Colin, for our next question, we know that you've known this for years now, but in 2020, a lot of people are now for the first time recognizing that they really do need to remain resilient. There are a lot of challenges in life that come up, especially as we're going into our 20s, looking for new jobs, trying new things, trying to meet people. It's not always going to work out at the beginning. So we'd love to hear about a challenge that you personally had to overcome, professional challenge that you had to overcome in your 20s, and how you did it.
Yeah, so I would say that for me, you know, again, I came out of college. I'd had a couple of good internships. You know, I applied at a lot of the big names and in newspapering at the time, and you know, I didn't get them. And so I remember one. I went to the Baltimore Sun, and you know, Baltimore Sun's a great paper, and it remains a great paper. And at the time, it was, you know, it was one of the top titles in the country. And the guy gives me a copy editing test, and I take it, and then we have the conversation. He's like, "You're not ready, kid. You're not ready for the Baltimore Sun. You need to go work, you know, at a mid-level paper before you come to us." Um, and you know, it was very, very abrupt. It was it wasn't the rejection was not positive in any way. It was almost like intentionally slapped me down, right? And I'll admit it kind of took me off guard, right? And it did shake that confidence that we talked about, right? And so I went and I thought about it, and I talked to a couple of other people. I reflected on what I had accomplished and where I was working at the time, which was at a paper that was, you know, not that much, not a rung that far below the Baltimore Sun. And I just was able to talk myself through that experience and realize that that was one person, right? One person who might have had a bad day, who maybe I reminded him, maybe my manner put him off, who knows, right? But it didn't define my job hunt, and certainly didn't define me as a journalist, right? And so I worked through all that, and the funny thing is like right after that, I got introduced to somebody at Tribune, and started pursuing that, and was and looked at a couple of Tribune papers. And I think I swear by the time, I might have the timing messed up, but they looked at my copy editing tests. They said, "Hey, you know what? You're not that bad," right? And they're like, "Hey, maybe we should talk to you." And I'm like, "No, you know, no thanks. I've got something else in the fire, you know." And it was. But before that, it was that moment where it's like, okay, are you going to let this guy's words, you know, knock you down? And I determined I wasn't going to.
Of course. Thank you for sharing that experience, because that's all something we can relate to heavily. I mean, we all remember our first, you know, big rejection that kind of just shakes your world. I don't want to say everything happens for a reason, but I will say things do happen, and it's all how you react to that. So it seems that you really clearly reacted to it well. Use it as an opportunity to pivot, and look where you are now. So thank you for sharing that experience.
Yeah, and you know, I also don't like to say that everything happens for a reason, but I do like to look at where I am in my life, and look back at things that didn't go my way, and say, okay, well, what if it had? Would my life be better? Would it be worse? You know, and that, I think, is not the same thing, but it is saying, you know, you don't know what would have happened. Like I got turned down for to be the Rome correspondent, and even after preparations had been made, I'd been sent there to find a house. I was enrolling my children in school. I mean, it was done, right? And it got pulled out, and to me, that was like that was a little bit later in my life, but that was just a crushing blow. And if I look back on that now, well, I don't know. I might have not come back. I mean, a lot of things could have gone differently from the way that my life is right now, which is something I have so much to be thankful for.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, it's really looking back at how you reacted to the situation. You know, maybe you didn't get that position. As you said, it could have been the person that you were just interviewing with. Maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he just had different ideas of who he was looking for. And that shouldn't necessarily define you as a person. So I really like how you kind of use the situation. You look back on the situation as kind of a pivot point and a growing point as to, you know, maybe that position wasn't for me, but then you went and got, you know, another great position. So it is really those building blocks that help. And it is kind of the people you surround yourself with, which is kind of our last question we wanted to ask you about.
That's right.
The networking aspect, right? So how do you kind of look at networking, and who do you try and surround yourself with that, you know, they're not all necessarily have to be, this person's going to get me farther in my career. It could be this person just motivates me to do better, or I just like hanging out with this person. Who do you like to surround yourself with, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, so to me, so it's funny because in, you know, the world of foreign correspondence is very small, right? And it's smaller now than it was when I was out in the field. And to me, you know, there was always this, like, you know, obviously the New York Times is the New York Times, right? And you know, it's a fantastic organization with fantastic people. And but you know, I was like simpatico, not with them, the correspondents from the New York Times, but with others who kind of looked at the job in a different way. Didn't look at it like I have to do this and this and this. Looked at it more like, what are we going to find, right? And what's the story we're going to find? We're not getting the story told to us by an editor. We're going to go out and we're going to find the story. And so I surrounded myself with people who, you could trust, right? And people who wanted to get the story but didn't want to get killed, right? That was always good, right? And people that you trust journalistically, right? That we were talked about at the very beginning of this conversation, right? That are going after accuracy, that are conducting themselves with integrity, that are working relentlessly. And then lastly, just, you know, people that you could bounce things off of, bounce things off of, you know, work through your own kind of doubts about what you were doing, work through your own, like, I'm struggling with this. A lot of times I've turned to colleagues in the middle of a story and say, I can't figure this part out, right? And so to me, that's always been the way I've operated. And I don't think that everybody does, because I think if you're looking for transactions in your personal relationship, if your relationships become transactional, you're screwed. You just are, because then when you don't offer something to somebody in a transactional way, then you've lost that connection, right? And so I don't know if you guys ever spend much time in Washington, but I remember when I was I used to work in Washington a lot on stories, and I was there once and was talking about somebody about a job in Washington. And, you know, this person, we were at a bar, and this person was one of those people that, you know, he's talking to you, but looking over your shoulder at everybody who's coming in, with the idea that, well, maybe that person is more important for me to talk to than this person I'm talking to, right? And to me, that is like, okay, that's fine. I don't operate that way. I don't want to work in an atmosphere that operates that way. I don't want to work in a town that operates that way, right? And so I think that, to me, mentorship and surrounding yourself with people is really important. But if it's transactional, it's fleeting at best.
And I totally agree with this concept you were talking about, how you like to surround yourself with people who you can kind of turn to and bounce things off of. I think that's really important, because, I mean, they say the best managers are the people who surround themselves with the best people, you know, so it's the idea that you're able to turn to this person, and you might not have the answer, but this person does, and that creates the best team. Not everyone knows every aspect of everything, but they know a lot of one thing that could be really helpful to what you're doing. So that's how I kind of see it. And I know that helps me at my job as well, where maybe I'm having an issue, but I can turn to my colleague and boom,
That's
that
right.
answer, I get that answer right away. And there's no slowing down or having to, you know, make a big deal about it. It's just somebody was there, thankfully, to help me right on point. So.
That's right. And, you know, you guys in your age group and, you know, people in their 30s, you know, everybody talks about the boomer, millennial, Gen Z divide. I'm telling you, it's the Gen X millennial divide that is the real divide, because my my generation, we're not collaborative, and we're not willing to, you know, turn to our colleagues and say, hey, can you help me out with this? And I just find that the collaboration among people in their 20s and 30s is refreshing and positive, and you guys are way ahead of Gen Xers on that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, you got to really get value. Oh, what were you saying?
Yeah, all my Gen Xer, you know, cohorts will be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But, you know, it's true.
He's on our side. Yeah, no, value is a two-way street. You know, you gotta give and take. You know, you gotta be able to, and that's how relationships are formed, productive relationships. I love your points about you don't want relationships to just be purely transactional. You know, you don't just want to take, because people really do recognize that, and that just really proves that you know, are not a person that a lot of people are going to want to work with. So thank you for making that point as well. So Colin, again, really, really appreciate you coming on our podcast. You know, as business leaders like you're the reason we can do this and share the best advice with our peers, fellow classmates, and it really means a lot to have you on. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Landon, my pleasure, and really interested to hear what you guys are doing. So I'm gonna tune in myself. Hey, and I'm glad you didn't ask me about all the you know, the non-work related things in the 20s, because that'd be a different podcast, right?
That's a part two. That's a part two.